Today on In Her Words, I got a little starstruck with the fabulous Sharon Lawrence. We all know Sharon as an award-winning actor, producer, and writer. What we also learned today is her tireless work on behalf of women, women's history preservation, and the industry she loves. I do want to let you know that a very small part of our conversation is about Sharon's new play, which is centered around suicide. We want to flag this sensitive subject matter for any of you who may have been affected. This is a fascinating conversation. I hope you enjoy. Well, Sharon, thank you so much for joining us today. You are, I was telling someone the other day, you're just such a supporter of women in entertainment overall. And on our social and our events. And we can't express enough how much we appreciate it. And I would love for you to tell the story of how Susan Kartsonis brought you to In Her Words to Women in Entertainment, because Susan is the same. I mean, she's just been since day one such a huge supporter of ours. And I don't think people understand how, just not only how much we appreciate that, but how we couldn't be here without it. We can't be here without, people that are with us on, day in and day out, and people that are with us. And I, one of the things I really want to talk about is it's not just us. You're such an advocate for so many organizations and have been throughout your career. And I know what that means. I know what that means to us, and I know what it means to those organizations. So I want to thank you for that. And then, let's kind of dig in. So I'd love to hear, just kind of overall from the beginning of your career to now, how you've made time for organizations like us, like Heal the Bay, like the Women's History Museum, and why is that important to you as part of your career in your life?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me as a guest and to congratulate you on the great summit where we actually met face to face. And I was excited to be an attendee at your summit because it's been a while since we've really gathered.
Yeah.
And that's something that I realized how much I missed. I was back to work pretty early as the pandemic allowed for. So I had the experience of being on set and creating. But what was slower to come back was the community of particularly the organizations that I had spent over 20 years involved with. I say, I've been part of the Women in Entertainment in space and energy since the last century. And I can be very optimistic when I say, because I've been in it so long, I've seen changes. And that's very encouraging to me. But I did miss being in the same room and meeting new people. So thank you for recognizing that what is a great asset to all of us in this business is gathering. For years back, when I first started, it was in theater, and I probably talked about this before, but I will reiterate that theater was not where I recognized the inequities, the gender inequities. And I think that's because, one, I was naive. I was, in my 20s when I started, actually, in high school. And because I was playing roles of strong women, a lot of the leading characters in musical theater and plays that they picked for high schools and even college had strong female leads. So that was already embedded in the material and the story that we were telling. But it wasn't until I got involved with television that I recognized the imbalance in the leadership. And as I look back on my theater days, my Broadway days, what I had to really reckon with was, while there may have been lots of women and strong women presented, there wasn't a lot of female leadership, women making the decisions. There weren't a lot of female producers or directors or choreographers. That's changed over time. But I had to recognize this um, once I was in the television world. That was what woke me up. And the leadership that I had on my representation team were people that were invested in organizations like Women in Film. And that was my first advocacy group that I became a part of. And it really did shift my understanding of not only what was truly happening, but what it would take to change it and how it took a team effort. So being together with women like yourself, like Susan Kartsonis, who I served with on our Women in Film Foundation. She's a wonderful producer. And she was on our foundation. Women in Film at that point had a philanthropic arm. Mm-hmm. And we were responsible for a couple of programs that, again, opened my eyes. Our Film Finishing Fund, which back in the 90s was a focus on women who had created a project but didn't have everything they needed to get it completed. And often that was sound mix or the rights to certain materials, right, or a color mix. And we, as an organization, realized that we could be that service that filled the gap. And we were fortunate to have a couple of women on our board who had relationships with entities that had the money and the value system to support it. And I will speak to that program in particular. We were able to use the relationships that one of our board members had to reach out to Netflix through a woman who at that point was the I guess VP of acquisitions. This was again in the 90s before they were producing anything on their own. And that woman was Cindy Holland, who later became the head of television at Netflix when they started producing their own material. Mm-hmm. And she said yes to us, our request for funding for our Film Finishing Fund, a grant of, at that point, it was $50,000. And we were going to split it up. We had a jury of the people on that, in our organization, who would view the submissions, and we'd make decisions about which films we were going to sponsor. And many of them went on to for award seasons. But Cindy had gotten her first job in television in post-production by looking at the Women in Film billboard job postings.
Oh my gosh.
So that stair step, that climb, that recognition that we have to be there for each other became really important to me. And it still is. So I serve now, while I'm not serving on the Women in Film board, and I am still very grateful for what they do and attend their events, and I'm a member, lifetime member. I have shifted I've taken that ethic, and I'm part of the Wilshire Ebell, the oldest women's club west of the Mississippi, because we're telling the story of women in Los Angeles. We'll be the archive for all the history of women in LA. I'm on the board of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation because I recognized that telling stories, which is part of what Women in Film did with our Legacy series, that in telling stories, that's what changes minds. That's what I do as an actor. But these nonprofits are much more effective when they can tell a story, the story of their mission or of the members that they're serving.
Can you talk a little bit more about what the SAG-AFTRA Foundation does? Because I know people probably are a lot more educated after this past year with what they are as a union, but what the foundation actually supports.
The foundation is our 501c3. That means we're the philanthropic arm, and to be a philanthropic arm, to be a nonprofit, you can serve your members, and we do so with educational programs. You'll find those easily on our YouTube channel, and those programs include, not all of them are on the channel, but you'll see our conversations with actors who are typically promoting a project, but they are also oftentimes given a retrospective of their careers. We have what's called the business conversations, and those will be panels with other professionals in our industry, whether it's casting directors or editors, showrunners, directors, fight choreographers, that is a great benefit to our members. We have our voiceover lab where our SAG-AFTRA members, union members, learn how to work as voiceover actors and can create their own tapes.
Mm-hmm.
We have computer labs, which taught people how to actually use or learn computer skills that are now so important: uploading material, editing material, learning how to create the best resume or bio or reel for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And we offer emergency assistance, which this past year, through the strike and the pandemic, we raised this year for the strike. We raised $15 million, primarily from our high income earners. You'll know all their names, right?
Right.
They're the big names
Right.
who donated. And then we have distributed 15.5 million of that, and we're still doing that. The criteria are important for a recipient to be able to qualify, but all that material and the qualifications are right there on our SAG-AFTRAFound.org website. And we've had scholarship programs where professionals and union members can actually apply for scholarships for their own educational transition, as well as for their children. So we have offered scholarships to lots of members whose kids are ready for their higher education. And it's very gratifying to be able to offer that service to our members. And our service that extends beyond our membership is our literacy program, and it's called Storyline Online, and it's a collection of videos where beloved actors read beloved children's books. And we have reached, millions of children around the world. Educators use our programs. Parents certainly use our programs, and it's very gratifying to see the synergy between storytelling that we as union members are so committed to, as actors who have trained to be experts in, and offering that to excite young people about storytelling. And we're able to do it through this program, but we hope that it continues on through their lives, recognizing the value of community, of their own creativity, and just learning that skill of reading that will get them ahead in life.
Well, that's fantastic. One of the things that when Renee and I started Women in Entertainment, one of our first pillars was that we wanted to be a place where we could share share knowledge. And Women in Film was one of our first partners, Gina Davis's organization. And, and even trying now through our weekly newsletter is, how do we get all of these things out there so people know about them? And not only things that are just beneficial to listen to, but the grants and the organizations that help, the finishing funds, the deadlines to enter for all the film festival, scholarships, foundations, grants. There's so many ways that the industry helps the industry and wants to pull up the next generation. But I find that one of the hardest things is just finding out about them, or being able to have the hours in the day. Like you said, they're all on everyone's website, but where do we, and I was thinking about when you were, talking about all of these things, thinking about things like Ava DuVernay did with Array, and, putting them all in one place and putting them all. And I feel like it's our responsibility as women in entertainment that we make sure everybody knows about these. And so I want to make sure that we're getting, through our podcast, through our newsletter, just getting the word out that all of these pieces are out there. Because I was like, oh, the finishing fund, I know about that, but I probably haven't heard about it or talked about it in a while. Maybe since before COVID, I haven't really thought about it. So making sure that we're getting all of those things out there with the SAG Foundation. And as you were talking about it, I thought, I heard, and I know obviously with our work we're more in tune, but I think the general public heard about SAG raising money or the donations coming into SAG to help its own members, to help its members that were, are not the high earners. So they had this fund, but to know that it's sat within SAG and it's a 501c3 and it's going, from members to members through that. I think that's something that, kind of got lost. It gets lost.
And to your point, we've been doing this for 40 years.
Right.
The
It didn't just
SAG-AFTRA
happen because of the
Foundation has
strike.
been there to
Yeah.
offer this help, and
Yeah.
also our catastrophic health coverage, which
Mhm.
is different than health insurance. But if someone is diagnosed with ALS
Right.
or a chronic condition that
Mhm.
means they can't work and they won't be able to earn the minimum that
Right.
will give them that health coverage. That's what our emergency assistant, pardon me, our catastrophic health coverage does.
Yeah, those
And
are
we
all
have
of those
social
pieces are
workers.
so important for people
Right,
to
and we
learn.
hire.
The
Mhm.
entertainment industry is so giving and takes care of its own people in just such a way. We were very involved with Will Rogers and very involved with, with some of the different, through Variety, some of the different organizations that really, really do a lot. So tell us a little bit about the National Women's History Museum and your ambassadorship there. Is that a similar, was that kind of a similar pull for you to, to want to, I hear the combination of helping people and making sure stories get told. Was that a similar pull to that organization?
Yes. When I learned through people that just recognized that I was an advocate for women's leadership, when I learned that we're one of the only countries that doesn't have a museum for the history of women, and that in 1997, the founder, she recognized that when she was in DC taking a tour of our national buildings,
Mhm.
that there was statuary everywhere, but of no women. And she re- pondered that and did some research to find out that the statues that did exist of Susan B. Anthony and other suffragettes and women who made this country what it is, they had been removed from the public areas and put in a basement. She made it her goal to change that and to approach the legislature with not only moving those images, those likenesses, that statuary to the rotunda, so there they are now, but to create a brick and mortar museum
Mhm.
that would highlight women's stories, because we know that that is what will encourage young women and all women to work to achieve their best,
Mhm.
their highest level of whatever it is that strikes their passion. And this was in 1997.
Okay.
We just in 2020, it was approved by the legislature that the National Women's History Museum would be housed in the Smithsonian, and there will be a building that will be created for this. That will probably take 10 more years before it actually exists on the mall. But in the meantime, in those past 10 years, we have been a digital museum, and that has put us way ahead of the curve,
Uh-huh.
because what our goal is to reach beyond DC, beyond the big metropolitan areas, but truly make this national, so that any young woman, any woman of any age, can go
Mhm.
on our website and post who they are inspired by and the history that they know that we might not be aware of. So it's very interactive. It's womenshistory.org is where you'll find this great platform. We have exhibits up certainly about the 100 years of women's voting rights, because that was our exhibit last year.
Mhm.
And you'll see the history that is the women that you may be familiar with, and many, many that you are not. We've been one of the consultants for the quarter program, meaning there are quarters out now that are featuring women who you haven't heard of before.
Right.
That the U.S. Mint used the National Women's History Museum as a partner in the consultation for who we should include in these coins. And that will be an ongoing project. But you'll find so much that is just underrepresented. And we know that that is what it will take for, say, our goal is to reach women throughout the country, ages 5 through 30. That's our focus right now. And to be in the curriculums in schools. And we know that the history has been told by, of course, the victors of the dominant members of any culture. And we also know that our future will depend on the over 50% of the population who are women in this country and national and internationally. That this country is only at 95%. We're not even 95% of parity with other women in other countries. We are so far behind in parity for the wage gap, for health access, and for education access. It's remarkable that this country is farther behind than 95% of the country on the planet. So we have a lot of work to do. And considering that our frontier is it will have to be conquered through STEM, and the storytelling around that is what we in the entertainment industry must take on and be responsible for. But I was at South by Southwest, and the panel that I sat on blew my mind because it was about governance and equal access through the galaxy. So that means in outer space. That's really what this panel is about. And the women that were on the panel were part of the Smithsonian, were venture capitalists, were women who were career professionals in treaties, and a guy who wants to make a curriculum that is standardized through K through 12 that will promote space engineers, will promote the people who are going to solve the problem of all those satellites in space that are now debris and trash. Who will help us solve how do we approach going to the moon, colonizing the moon. The race for that dominance is real. It's with China, of course, it's with India, it's with African countries. And it will be about mining rights, all these things that women will, of course, be leading in. And we know that up there, women will not be at the same disadvantage that they are here just because of gravity or the lack of gravity. So telling those stories is what my industry, I know, is good at. And that's why I want to encourage that. That's why I'm jumping here to why I say yes to women all the time in what they're doing. I said yes to Ava DuVernay with her first feature film. I read the script. She'd never directed a feature before. But I said yes because of what women in films ethics taught me. And it's a yes that I'm so proud of because I've continued to work with her. I said yes to a woman who was in her 60s and writing her first play about Katharine Graham, who was a leader in publishing. She was the publisher of the Washington Post in
One of my
1963.
favorite books of all time, Katharine Graham's book.
Her biography, personal history, right? Pulitzer Prize winning. We're telling the story of her life prior to that time. She was the victim of domestic violence. Her husband, sadly, suffered with bipolar disorder. She became publisher 3 days after he suicided. And she talks about the illness, but the domestic violence and that real challenge that she faced for the over 20 years of her marriage is something that we're exploring in this solo play that was directed by a woman, Michelle Joyner, and written by Robin Gerber, who Robin writes about women's leadership. She wrote first about Eleanor Roosevelt. She wrote about Katharine Graham as biographies, and then Ruth Handler, who created Barbie and Mattel. So I love partnering with women, and it's to me what I will hope that my legacy is. You ask how I have time for it. that advocacy has been my legacy. I don't have kids, and this is a lot of how I spend my time and my energy to want to give back and nurture
Mhm.
and watch things evolve and grow. And it's a healthy way for me to
Oh my gosh.
channel a community and building and an investment and a legacy.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And it's amazing. And to, I think it is so unique and eye opening for me to think of the all of these things you're talking about. I mean, colonizing the moon and women's history and all of these pieces to think about the entertainment industry and think about, our industry, the real part we can play in that because there's stories that need to be told. And like you said, who does it better? And that is such a because it's going to the more formats it's in, the more platforms it's on, the more people that these stories will reach, and the more educated we'll become. And
Mm-hmm.
when someone would think about colonizing the moon, their first thought is going to be, oh, it's going to be a science book, or it's going to be only taught in the classroom. And to bring a storytelling, vision to that or view to that is going to make it so much more approachable
Mm-hmm.
and so much more and be able to reach so many more people. When I keep thinking back to when I was at ArcLight, where I used to run ArcLight cinemas in LA, and Chris Foreman, who owned ArcLight, he was a third generation, the Foreman family, and he used to get the question all the time of, he wanted to do business differently, and he wanted to. He was very much concerned about storytelling, very much concerned about how people operated in business. And he would get asked all the time, why aren't you a professor, or why didn't you go into education, or why didn't you go into politics? And he was Stanford educated, Harvard educated, Oxford educated, and his answer was always that I can reach so many more people and change lives through this business of entertainment, where teaching in a classroom, you get x number of people each semester. Politics is what it, but looking at it differently, of how you can reach people through storytelling, how you can reach people. I mean, we used to have, I mean, at only our Hollywood location, we'd have 10,000 people a day come through,
Mm-hmm.
on a Saturday. And to say, if we're doing business differently, and we're curating what's on screen, and we can have 10,000 people a day come through just that one theater, how many more people we can reach. And when you were talking about, storytelling and bringing entertainment in and bringing, your perspective to these boards, that's what I thought of, is you need new thinking about how we reach people and how we reach them in a way that
Mm-hmm.
are, that's going to stick with them, I guess. And that is, that's just such an interesting way. And you're right, it is your legacy, and it is something you've had a great, I want to talk about some of the fun things too, some of your great roles and groundbreaking roles. I mean, NYPD Blues was a groundbreaking project,
Mm-hmm.
and that you were a huge part of in your career of, being on stage, being in front of the camera, being behind the camera, all of those pieces that I love hearing. So many people would rest on that and say, oh, I've had a great career and I've had fun doing these, but taking that one step further is just so. Not only is it so encouraging, but to our listeners who you saw at the summit, there's so many young people and so many people starting out or ready to take that next step in their career, and hearing someone like this, hearing your story is encouraging, and you're going to inform and encourage people behind you, not the legacy of what you're doing and where that sits, but also the legacy of what of who you are in doing that. I think is so important for people to see.
Well, thank you for the encouragement. It feels good to be part of it. I'm fortunate. I still do love creating characters and being
Yeah.
on set, and the challenge of doing this solo play has been
Oh my gosh.
thrilling.
Yeah.
Um, but it's not. I am a social creature, so that's part of why this works for me. Not everybody is a joiner. Not everybody feels the uplift from that kind of group output, or the communal aspect of creating. And the good news about our business is it does really require so many different personality types to create a project, to get it made, to get it completed, and then to be seen. We were working on the play about Katharine Graham before the pandemic. And when the world shut down, the good news was technology like this allowed us to, I filmed it right in my living room with the writer on Zoom in Ojai, where she lived, the director in Connecticut on Zoom, where she was. And we had 2 cameras, and I had learned through our rehearsal process to actually have the screen, to be for literally talking straight down the lens, as we say in the business. And we used that the 2 cameras edited together, a wide and a close up about here. I had the script. We built it as a reading rather than as a performance, because you couldn't suspend all the disbelief. I was concerned with that we couldn't. Although my living room, looked like the right kind of place that she would be, but still, I just hadn't had the opportunity to really transform the way I do now with the wig and all the other things that really make me, look more like Katharine Graham that we know, that we have an image of in our heads. But the story was still so universal that we used it to offer as fundraisers for domestic violence groups, the organizations that were seeing a huge burden, an increased burden in their needs for services, because the pandemic meant that abusers were locked up with their victims.
Right.
And it became a chance for us to also be part of panel conversations. We would play the video for them, and then we did this all around the country. Give them an opportunity to host a talk back afterwards. And it was so important for us as creators to actually be able to complete the loop with the people who we were making this for. And this technology allowed us to do that. And I think that that's something that maybe the young women, the future creators, will have more opportunities to do. We know that they will, because there'll be so much interactive content. AI will allow for that more. And while that scares us as actors, as performers, rightfully so, it will, as creators, probably expand their interactivity with their audience to such a degree that I can't even conceive of.
No, you're right there. It's moving that's moving so fast. I'm curious, as you're talking about, these things that are important to you, and these different, as you discover these different groups, did you, what was your inspiration, and who is did you have, like, were your parents activists? Were they encouraging? You talked about the strong roles you saw on screen or on stage that you initially played, but is it your husband? Was it just in you? Where did does that strength and that wanting to, when it comes to wanting to serve, did that come from someplace else?
Well, my dad was a journalist,
Okay.
and he was out in the community reporting. But because he was a journalist, they were in the 60s and 70s and 80s and even 90s, because he worked in that for 40 years. They were not encouraged to join civic groups so that they could stay neutral as the news media. But we were active in our our very progressive church, and they were members of the choir, and my dad did plays. So I inherited his hardware, that extrovert, that comfortable on stage in front of a microphone. My mother was an early childhood educator, and she was our the leader in my Girl Scout troop, and that's where I first really experienced that female core, that sisterhood
Mm-hmm.
of generations, and because the leaders were women, and the participants in the program were women, and that always felt great to me. I wish that I had an all girls school education. I think that would have been great, say from junior high on, because in my educational years in public school, I know that I was part of the group that did not step forward academically the same way that my potential would have allowed if I had been in a boarding school. I know it like I know the back of my hand. But that wasn't really a family legacy. I mean, it's something that my family had done.
Mm-hmm.
But I did find my way through leadership in the areas that I had aptitude for, which was performance. And then in college, I was part of my resident groups association that were working toward providing programs to prevent rape on campuses. So I think that got me interested in public advocacy outside of my realm, my passion.
Mm-hmm.
And once I was in New York, I was very busy working and on the road a lot, so I missed the opportunity to be involved civically. But once I got involved in television and film, that was more available to me because I was in one place. Right. And I started scuba diving, so that's what got me interested in environmental work, because when I saw the degradation of the oceans, and it's all these paths are not linear, but what they have, I think, thematically, is I like working with a group. I really do, and that's one of the things that I hope I never lose. And I can see that I hope that I'm always, no matter what age, and that's important, is that women of every age be included in these opportunities and feel welcome in these rooms. And the wisdom that the older ones, the women who I worked with at Women in Film and the Foundation were often 20 to 30 years my senior, and they were such an important part of my awakening and my evolution.
No, absolutely. And that, learning from, and or you were talking about the, groups like the Girl Scout, and as we were talking and you were, especially talking about the Women's History Museum, my daughter and I are involved with a charity group that's mothers and daughters, and the girl, really pushing, the girls for leadership and for things. And one of the other moms asked me, she said, would you pick out a few of your podcasts that talk about leadership? I'd love that on the website so the girls can listen. And I was like, when you were talking about that, I'm like, I have got to put this on the website. The girls have got to know that these things are all there. And I mean, especially being this, the Smithsonian digital option, and having, I'm sure that I can find the South by panel on, but I think
I'll send you the link. It was
absolutely, that we can put it on our newsletter, that I can have it for National Charity League as well.
And I just want to interject here. It's the women who are working toward equity and really care about that representation. Yes. So that is not lost on me, and it shouldn't, and it won't be lost on any of the women in your organization or who has the benefit of accessing what you're offering.
Just having them know that it's out there is just so important, and I mean, I'm learning so much. I'm like, you see me taking furious notes, but getting that. But no, it is. The women have to move. They have to move things forward, and they're out there fighting for things and
Mm-hmm.
out there, out there finding these gaps that we still need to fill. And we know about salary gaps, and we know about, the work at home, the work, working inside and outside the home with children, child care and the health care that you're
Right.
mentioning.
That the medical field,
Yeah,
that's what President Biden and First Lady Dr. Jill Biden and Maria Shriver worked toward, that
yeah,
women's health bill that he signed, because for so many years, my husband's in the medical field, he's a
mhm,
physician, for so decades and centuries, medicine has been focused and developed around male bodies,
right,
but female
right.
bodies are so different. So advocating for the representation, the equality, the true understanding that we must be looked at in a different way. That was women that led that.
Oh, absolutely. And Maria Shriver is, that's a whole, we could have a whole
Mm,
nother
mm.
conversation of the things that, what she's moving forward. So as we talked a little bit about the shop and the play
A
and
shot,
oh,
shot.
shot. Did I say
Yes,
P?
it's
Shot.
yeah, it's a double entendre on her husband's suicide
Oh,
with a shotgun, which I use in the play, and also her opportunity to run the paper.
like she got her
So,
shot.
mhm,
But
mhm.
as are you now, do you look for projects now that are, that have more background or more when you're looking at when new, things are coming to you, and you're still working so much on stage, on screen, are you looking for projects that have a little more meaning to them like that, or has that changed over time? I mean, I look back at your different, your projects, and they've all had such a personality, and they've all
Mm.
had such depth to them. But is that changing now as you look at projects that you say yes to?
For me, I if I played the same thing over and over again, even if it was lucrative
Mhm,
and a very viable strategy for a career uh, growth and then sustainability,
mhm,
I know I would be unsatisfied.
mhm,
I People ask, "Do you like stage or film better?" And my response is, that's like asking me if I like Chinese better than Italian. I like them both. And if I had to eat one all the time, I would lose my enthusiasm for that one and be craving the other.
mhm,
So
mhm,
I'm really fortunate that I've been able to keep it mixed up. And
mhm.
I do a play every year. I'm a member of a wonderful theater company here in Los Angeles that's run by women, run by young women. Why I
What's
said
the name of
yes
it?
to joining.
Plug it,
It's
plug it.
it's called the IAMA Theater Company, IAMA. We just celebrated our 16th anniversary, and our patron is Shonda Rhimes, and
Oh,
we had a wonderful event that celebrated her. That was a huge success, and I'm so proud of what we continue to do. It's new plays.
uh-huh.
Um, there's a play coming up that we're co-producing at the Boston Court Theater called The Body's Midnight, about dementia,
Mhm,
and I'm very proud and impressed with this artistic team that wanted to tell that story. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to be part of it just because of scheduling and some needs that now at this stage of my life, I have people who I want to be there for, my parents. So
mhm,
I'm a bit more um, circumspect on saying yes to every single thing, because it depends on
mhm,
what they might need from me, how
mhm,
how they are
mhm,
doing. And I have never, uh, really had that kind of decision um, as part of my, the Venn diagram of what I'm going to want in my life at any certain time. But the time is now for me to think that way. And I I say yes to things that I haven't done yet. I just played a crime boss. I played some certainly mentally ill people, and I take that as a real responsibility. Um,
mhm,
Mental illness is can be so misrepresented, and I played crazy serial killers. And while that's fun and interesting, and feels like a great creative challenge, I think it's also important that we speak very honestly about the real truths about mental illness, and not just use it as a way to shock and create, stories that are sort of amped up falsely, and may put mental illness in a light that is not accurate, that portrays them as villains and or just strictly dangerous people. I also oftentimes I'll say yes if because I love traveling. I love location. I've been very, very satisfied. I'm a gypsy by nature, so I can sleep anywhere, and I like moving around. And not everybody likes that, but I know, and I tell young actors or just people that are going into the business that want to be part of this field, is that you need to think about whether or not you're somebody that needs your home base. Because if you are, consider a career or the aspects of this business that can serve that, right? Like writers don't have to pack up and leave. They are often, more solitary creators anyway, then they don't have to pack up and leave. But those of us as actors, we do. It's just a reality. Even in the theater world, if it's not New York, it's a regional theater or a tour. And I'm Joe Pickett, the series that I'm on, that's on Paramount Plus. It's a modern Western, and they give me a chance to sing and just play a lot of different colors. And we were in Calgary, and I loved shooting in Calgary. And it's on Paramount Plus, where a lot of the Western genre is living now. And I'm really pleased and grateful that we got 2 seasons. I wish we'd had a third, but the field now, the financial field now, and with the strike and pandemic, has made it really tough for shows to have anything beyond 2 seasons. So it doesn't always pencil out, but I'm glad we had him, and I'm glad people can see him.
Yeah, no, that's a fun one. I didn't know. I assumed it's filmed in Texas.
Actually, it's set in Wyoming. It's about a game
but I just thought it looked Texas-y for
it's the Rockies. It's the Rockies for sure. Okay. I just was in Austin filming a Texas show that hasn't been announced yet, but there's a lot going on in Texas. Taylor Sheridan's doing a lot there.
There's a lot of things there. So for when you have, after the kind of downtime, out of not working, I was just reading a really interesting article, and it was talking about how people are watching, tend to watch things over and over again. If it's something that you want, kind of want to go back to, if you're stressed out or anything. And this is why when you and I talked at the summit, and I'm like, I know who you are. Of course I do, because Rizzoli Isles is my show. It is my, I'm stressed out. I need to eat some lunch. I can always find Rizzoli Isles, and I love your character. I love the show. But I was laughing because I was like, oh my God, is she going to be like, what? Why do you watch? Why do you watch Rizzoli Isles as your stress out show? But I would love, it's my, I know it's going to happen. It's a great little mystery. I love all of it's female centric. I love all the characters. I still follow them I follow all of you guys on Instagram, but I'd love to hear kind of what you're reading, what you're watching, what your downtime, just what your downtime shows or your downtime podcasts or books are.
Oh yeah, I'm loving the podcast by the creators of Joe Pickett, and I would tell everybody in our industry to listen.
Okay. Do you know
you can find it on YouTube and on their podcast. Okay. It's called The Showrunners Show.
Okay.
And it's the Dowdle brothers and Stacy Chbosky. Stacy is a writer on our show, and she's fantastic. And they are really they're demystifying what it means to create a television series from your source material, how to pitch, the preparation for a year or so to pitch, how to work with DPs, how to work with studio executives, how to work with actors. It's a great service to anybody who wants to know how to make television.
Okay.
I'm crazy about it, and I'm crazy about them because I fell in love with them working on Joe Pickett. They were just
Okay.
the best. They
I'm
also
gonna
did
have to
Waco,
put that in our
which is a
newsletter
really
to
important
see.
series. Yeah,
Yeah.
Waco. I love Wiser Than Me, of course. That's Julie Louis Dreyfus's podcast.
Yes.
I don't go back and rewatch things, and I don't really watch a lot that I'm in. Once I've seen it, I've kind of, feel like I've lived it once when I shot it, and then I live it again when I do watch it. And I will watch stuff I'm in. I'm not, I've learned just to do it and to accept it
Mhm.
and live with it. And as my equipment changes, I need to know what's happening on screen as it's changing. Now I'm the tool. But I did go back and watch a movie that I was in not that long ago because it was a surprise, like a sleeper hit called The Lost Husband.
Yeah.
And that's Leslie Bibb and Josh Duhamel, and it ended up on Netflix right as the pandemic was happening, and it became a #1 movie in the country. And we shot it in outside of Austin, so that's why I looked at it again. I said, I just want to see what if the locations are going to be the same for the show that I just finished doing. But once I've seen something, I kind of feel like I've done it. There's so much more to watch that
Right. There's just so much great
I'm not looking
content.
for familiarity in shows. I'm looking
Mm.
for something new. I want my
Mhm.
mind expanded, and I want to watch people whose technique I'm really interested in. That's the way I operate.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So we get so many people like, don't tell anybody, but I watched The Bachelor, or
Oh,
like
yeah,
my downtime
right. I don't
yeah,
like competition shows. I'm not a competitive person, and that kind of show, that tension, that
yeah. And
the
that pitting women
alliances, the
against women, I've
backstabbing,
never, yeah, I
it
can't watch
makes me
that one.
uncomfortable. But it's
Yeah,
funny
I'm
because
with
I play those women a lot, those conniving women. But anybody who knows me knows that ain't
but
that ain't me.
that's
I've
not
never
you.
really played a character that's a lot like me. I mean, a couple of the Hallmark movies I've done, which I've said yes because my mother-in-law loved them, and
Uh-huh.
she said, "Gosh, I wish you'd do something where there's, people are happy." And I thought, "You're right. Okay." And that was very satisfying to do. And I'm really proud of the fact that the movies that I was part of had the first gay couples in them,
Oh,
for gay
okay.
couples on Hallmark. That meant a
Uh-huh.
lot to me. Yeah. And I love sitcoms. I love doing sitcoms. I love multicam. I had a great experience with my show Fired Up. That
Yes,
was
yes.
Leah Remini and Mark Feuerstein and Jonathan Banks, who people
Uh,
don't even think of as comedy, but he was great.
Leah's
And
so
another one,
funny.
yeah, Ladies Man, which put me with Alfred Molina, but Betty White and Dixie Carter. And that women of that generation of television actor, those two
Yes.
gals, boy, they were so great to be around.
There was no that they were fantastic.
I think life just didn't move as fast as it does for them back in their heydays. So they had a
Mhm.
graciousness about them that is important, and I learned from them. I try to bring that to a set. I think
Mhm.
that's something that I can offer. This kind of old school, but always appreciated.
Have you noticed a difference on, on set and what the teams look like now as you're, doing things for
Mm,
streamers and doing things
hmm
for network and films and plays? Do you see kind of the behind the scenes are starting to look different?
I do. The last show that I was on, I saw 4 or 5 women in the camera department. That was great. That's
Mhm.
fairly new. When I did Queen Sugar, it was,
Yeah,
I'm not sure what Ava's mandate was. Well, all of the women, the first season, were all women of color, all the
right.
directors. Uh, it stayed all women, but over the 5, 7 seasons, um, it they just gave so many people their start,
Yeah.
and I've been able to work with those people again, and it feels great. Um, I see, uh, I see, because they're shorter seasons, there are fewer opportunities for directors. And when I say shorter, we
Mm-hmm.
used to do 22 episodes, but there
Hmm.
would maybe be 1 or 2. And Leslie Linka Glatter was always, one of those. And she's now the head of the DGA, the Directors Guild,
Hmm.
because she had the opportunity to ascend. But now the mandates often are at least 50% of the directors are women. So on most of the shows that I work on, I see that. but they're just fewer episodes, so it's fewer
Yeah,
opportunities
yeah.
for all of
Well,
us.
no, I think I feel like Ava really changed things with Queen Sugar, and I
Hmm.
love that she got press for it, where it
Yes,
was, women directors, women of color, first-time directors,
right.
and that people were really seeing, and she's been at the summit, as you know, before, and she's
Hmm.
just so,
And a
but
black female
for
DP,
yeah, and
Ira
just
Kelly.
saying, you're saying, no,
Yeah.
yes, you can find them if you look for
Hmm.
them. Don't say I looked and I couldn't find anybody.
But we also
Look
have to
harder.
grow them. We have
Yes,
to
yes.
grow them. And I'll leave you with this. There was a study that was recently out that women's longevity, they've been able to tie, and why it is greater than men's, is because we come together during our crisis time. We seek each other out
Hmm.
as community, as support. Men don't necessarily do that, whether they just go internally. They are not allowed to show the vulnerability, the weakness. So the stress on their lives puts them at greater physical risk. But we as women are healthier when we come together with groups like Women in Entertainment.
Well, that's a great place to end. Thank you so much, Sharon. It was so, so nice to visit with you. And I know you're busy, so thank you for the time. We
Oh,
always appreciate. But I feel like we have so many things I'm like I want to put in our newsletter next week, and just so many pieces that I want to make sure that we're doing our job and getting out there. So thank you so
thank you.
much for sharing.
Thank you for being a resource, for being there as a place that I will continue to look and search and see what's happening through and share it with the people that I'm connected to as well. So you made it easy. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and leave a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. To stay up to date with In Her Words, join the conversation by following Women in Entertainment on our social channels and subscribe to our weekly newsletter at womeninentertainment.com.